Hello and welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. Today we welcome Mark Morse of Morse Code. He takes us through a 20-year journey that spans from 2002 to his ultimate exit to Gravity Global in 2022. It's the normal accidental entrepreneur journey where he continuously grew and expanded as an individual as the company grew. Hear how this accidental entrepreneur went into the lion's den and negotiated a favorable deal for himself and his team with the PE-backed international giant. So let's dive in. Mark, thank you much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Look forward to the conversation.
You've been in this agency world for quite a long time. 2002 is the agency in question that we'll talk through today. But give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, I do have scars to prove the length of time I have been in the industry. And I came through it. One of the things I love about the business is most of us come into it from a unique path. It's not something that we necessarily, most of us, I think, don't set it out as a career. For me, that was the case as well. I got into it by way of a music background and was playing and teaching and composing and on the road and doing sessions as a musician. And one of those pathways led me to a music technology company that was whose brand was being managed by a really, really great design firm. And I quickly learned how passionate those fans were about that brand and became really interested in the application of creativity in business. So started to pursue that direction and led me to the Minneapolis agency market. So that's where I first cut my teeth at Fallon and Gilligan, and then made a hop across Hennepin Avenue to Carmichael Lynch in downtown Minneapolis, and then was bit by the entrepreneurial bug shortly thereafter.
I'm terribly sorry. It's a rampant virus when you're bit.
Exactly.
What was your instrument?
Drums, percussion. I still play a lot these days, do a little bit more composing than do playing out. But yeah, how about you? Are you musically inclined?
No, I'm athletically inclined. Sadly, saxophone, all the things that any parent tried to expose me to, piano, all the bits just didn't stick. For some reason, this M&A and athletics and competition was my magnet. But you must have been a fun agency owner, drummer, connected in the music industry. You must have tunes playing all the time. Like, what was that initial startup culture like for you?
It was really high energy. I think there are some tenets from the music and band days that I brought to the agency. I think one of them was just the ability to spot talent and bring them in at their respective instruments. So instead of a bass player, we might find a really great digital designer or developer or strategist, and being able to kind of coalesce that into this meaningful synergistic machine that would, I always aligned my management style to what I heard Miles Davis' management style was, which was he would go find amazing players and let them know that I understand we're not going to be together forever because you are a monster at your craft and can go do your own thing. But man, when we are together, we're going to do some pretty magical things. So I tried to make that happen with a lot of our teams and individuals along the way. And I think that just brings energy to the culture and their own contribution kind of plays off of each other. So it was really fun.
That sounds amazing. It also helps me key up the name. So Morse Code from a percussion guy. I see where this was going. So what was the agency like from a service perspective when you first started it? Like, what did you offer the market and how did that evolve over the 20 years?
Yeah. So in 2002, the name of the game then was integrated marketing, and everything kind of shifts and evolves over the years. It's almost the same stuff with a slightly different name. Now it's multi-channel and we at our core, however, even back in the early days, brand and brand strategy was a passion of mine. And we had always started with brand strategy thinking right out of the gate, and then determining how we're going to take those things to market. So this was kind of at the birth of agencies shifting from traditional to digital. We built out a really great web and development and digital team along the way. And then that as an agency, one of the things I tried to take from my Fallon experience was being on the edge of innovation. Fallon would sit on the edge of innovation boat and lean out over the edge and just take up the what else can we possibly do? And other agencies would sit back a few rows and wait for the waves to die down before they determine if they want to go into it. I preferred the chaos and the disruption and the excitement of riding out on the edge. So we tried to have our work out there. And even though a lot of clients wouldn't necessarily hire you for that because their risk tolerance wouldn't be at that same level, it was comforting for them to know that we can push them in those directions. So that's where we tried to play. And shortly after we built out some of those digital capabilities, the content and film and video era, digital video is quickly coming upon us. So that became an early mover opportunity for us as well.
It seems like, and correct me if this is wrong, but you have a passion and you were energized by what you could create. That means typically you're an accidental entrepreneur when you're a craftsman like that. So
yeah.
What kind of struggles did you experience as you were saying, okay, now practicing the craft is one thing, building my orchestra is another, and now I'm running this business. So what did that look like?
Accidental entrepreneur is so great. I love that. And so true. You know, when I started the business, I didn't really think of it as launching a business. I just thought of it as I'm going to continue creating great work for clients. And that's just what I had become good at and comfortable with. And then you quickly learn about those other sides of it. Like, okay, so we need an office because people shouldn't be coming out to my house anymore. We have more than just 2 people on the team. So how do you go about that? Where do you start to understand the insurance requirements and the financial side of the house to fund all of this, and who's going to fund it if funds are a little short, and how do you get through all that stuff? So I had gone through as a musician, and when I made that transition to the agency business, I realized I didn't know much about business. So I did go back and get an MBA in marketing, which was super enlightening for me at that phase of my career. So I was able to understand the areas to shore up, and was quick to realize that as an entrepreneur, you have that energy and belief that you can do everything and anything, but because you can doesn't mean you should. So there were some of those early stumbles where, you, as a typical small business, you ask your relative or wife or significant other to do something for you for a period of time. And then once you get to a point of graduation, you can hire somebody to help with that. So I think some of those areas for us, for me, finance was a big side of it. I have always had a understanding of its importance, but also an understanding of my limitations in being able to understand how and to best leverage some of those tools. So my wife came from a financial background, so she was an early partner of mine in those early days. And then leaning into a CFO through a kind of a part-time CFO for hire was a really key move for us. And I had learned a lot about some of those capabilities through networking and how other people run their business, and not only other agency owners, but other professional service owners and other small business owners. So sometimes misery loves company, but entrepreneurship and energy does as well. So really helpful.
Yeah, it's how we learn, right? When you forge out on your own as a professional creative, and you want to do more of the thing you love to do. It's not front and center to run a business, to set it up properly, to manage the accounting and billing side and taxes. Those aren't the things that got you excited about being out on your own. So you had a very typical creative maturation process, right, where you were growing as a professional as the company is growing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a wonderful experience. Hindsight in it can be really challenging. So you ran the agency during two pretty significant adjustment periods in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
I like to maybe touch on those periods and how that then made you stronger or ultimately fueled your decisions around what ultimately became your exit.
Yeah, sounds good.
So let's go the first one. 2008, 2009. You're relatively, still a startup vibe, small business vibe. You're learning to run a business, and then boom, things start shifting and changing underneath you. How did you adapt to that? Because that was right as social media was coming and new services again, new technology. What did that look like in the agency?
Yeah, I was fortunate early on to have been given the advice that never have more than 20% of your revenue come from one client. And I had worked, and our team worked diligently to make that a reality. So we had just won a large piece of technology business in 2008 and 9, and that sector got hit really hard. So our 20% curve went up to about 35% with this new account. But at the same time, while they've started to fade away, we also had a significant foothold in healthcare. And we learned early that healthcare is, at least in the 2008, 9, 10 era, was a very recession-proof industry. So we started to double down in pursuing some of those businesses and a lot of organic growth. We had managed to sink our teeth into a large health insurer, and we're introducing some of those best-in-class innovative marketing solutions that serve the client really well in this digital era. A lot of it was digital content, video content, and we honestly had some of our best growth years in 2008, 9, and 10 because I think finding that right industry and being able to help them think innovatively and digitally during that time. So I think those were some of the keys survival at that era.
You're essentially like checking the box on discount factors on businesses, right? Are you in an industry that has headwind or tailwind during economic uncertainty or disruption? Do you have significant client concentration that puts the company at various degrees of risk? Were you thinking of it as like exit discount factors, or was this just making the business stronger and more secure?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was not on my radar at the time. For me, it was all about protecting the team and making sure that we can keep the people we love working with and have on staff and on team and just deliver great work for our clients and grow the business. That was really what it was about. I was not considering the value of the business. I always felt that would come later. And we can get to that a little bit later too, but that was not why I was doing it. It just ended up being all the right check boxes, as you said.
The team is, as I've researched, is very important to you, and it's probably obvious to the listener or the audience member that you built a strong culture. You have the energy. It sounds like you have the passion that really creates the environment where people can thrive. And you then couple this kind of the smart moves throughout the 20 years of saying right industry, right time, really focus on protecting the team, running the business as well as you can, and getting sage advice at little bits throughout that journey so you can ultimately create something that's respective of your vision for it. And then the team was so important. That was one of your priorities in selling. So since you didn't start the agency with the intention to sell it, since you didn't think you were qualified or mature enough to sell too early on, when did that hit? When did it say, oh, this is something that I can sell or exit, or grow with another partner?
Yeah, I remember it pretty well. I had just moved the agency from the comfy confines of a suburban Minneapolis office, which was largely to facilitate my lifestyle of working, coaching my kids. I've got two boys, and I was coaching everything from baseball, basketball, football, shooting home all the time, um, and it was a lifestyle location. And as my coaching years sunsetted and the business was getting to a level where we could really benefit from just an injection in the business culture and community, our lease was also sunsetting in this location. So I moved the business to downtown Minneapolis. And the intent there was to attract bigger, better clients, attract more talent, and it worked almost instantly. We had a great location with exterior signage on some of the prominent streets in downtown, so awareness was going up. And within the first year of being down there, I was approached by a buyer, a publishing group who was interested in weaving together some agencies. And at that time, I took the call and went through some of those conversations and realized that there are some things I can do to, as you mentioned, improve the valuation of the business. And there were a handful of things that were not in ship shape yet, so I needed to focus on some of those. But it was probably in that 2000, about 10 years before I ended up selling, that I realized, okay, there's some things I can start to work towards.
Yeah, getting that information with enough runtime to make the changes
Yeah.
is very helpful. What
Super fortunate.
were some of the things you pulled out of those initial conversations that said, "Oh, I got to solve this first, this second"?
I learned a couple of the different. I learned that a lot of the methodologies I used to run the business, I used to just run a good, healthy, profitable business. But I also learned how they can play into a better valuation. So for us, I learned about the staff to revenue ratio. Let's try and keep staffing at 50% of your revenue, understanding the ebb and flow. That proved out to be a key driver in our EBITDA performance, as well as this 20% or less with our account roster. Those kinds of things I was able to articulate and put the narrative together. But then also understanding and positioning our team and the talent as part of that, the tool set that we deliver. And I think the other thing at that time, when my very first conversations, I realized, man, we don't have really great systems. We get stuff done, but half the time it feels like duct tape and a prayer. So are there things that we can be doing to shore up a better delivery and just systematize that? So if we do have a change in staff, they can come in and plug in. So we started to systematize some things, which informed how I'm going to hire and who I brought in to help build some of those things. And all of that started to just make us much more efficient, but also a smooth, well-oiled machine when it came to delivering the work. I think we were always good at coming up with the ideas and executing a beautiful piece of creative or a campaign, but when it came to actually delivering it through these multiple channels that the world continually adds for us, it became a little bit of a challenge. So through that systemizing of the process, we were able to make things a lot smoother, which improved our profitability and efficiencies, et cetera.
Did you disclose those conversations with anyone in the company, or are these pretty much you as an owner kind of seeing what's out there and learning from these interactions?
Yeah, I didn't share any of that with anyone for fear. You build this great culture and people are really magnetically attracted to it. I felt really fortunate that I found people who bought into that culture. And when you have a team that buys into it, then it just makes it even stickier for more people. And I was really, I used to take it personally if somebody would leave, and it would just kind of tear away at me, especially if it was somebody on the team who I felt could continue to grow and contribute. Um, but I also learned that the importance of our culture can be a benefit to the strength of the business. And I think most agencies have great cultures, at least the ones that tend to value their team and growth that way. When we landed on a growth mindset as part of our culture, and we let our teams know that we want you to work fearlessly here. We want you to explore things. No one's getting fired for failure. We, in the name of improvement and betterment and staying fresh and creative, et cetera, this is a great place for you to be. So I was fearful about letting people know that I might be considering changing that or handing the reins over to somebody. So I didn't share any of that until, and as I got some counsel over the years, I learned only share some of that with a tight circle. And then once you have shared that, make sure that you're pretty serious about it. And I wasn't at that time.
What I hear you saying is, in a sage advice, although you love your people, you trust them, they help get you to where the company is, you don't know what the next phase means to them. And so it does have some risk in regards to disclosures or asking you questions that you haven't even fully thought of yet, because it's not dictated by you. The buyer is going to say, Mark, we love having you around, or Mark, we don't need you around. Thank you for your service, right? You don't know. And the team wants to know. Get us to right before you were approached by the company that ultimately acquired you. What was the size of the team? What did the agency look like?
Yeah. We were around probably just under 40 full-timers in our downtown office. We had recently built out a really great digital media team, which was probably the shortest leg of the stool at that time. But we had really just started to find a great stride. And again, coming through the pandemic, we had fabulous growth. And I think a lot of businesses shifted more to the services that we just naturally created. And we continued to do well during that time as well. So the business was humming. I had engaged a broker a few years prior to this, just to understand, to make sure that I'm ready. And I had heard of a great gentleman in town that I started to partner with. And it was a slow roll. I was not looking for a sale. I was looking for the right sale. And as an entrepreneur, I've been doing this for 20 years. I feel I can do marketing for big and small businesses at any time. And I was looking for a little bit more for myself, but also more for my team. That was really the motivating factor. I felt there were some people on my team who were ready to step onto a little bigger stage. So when you start thinking that way, you can you start to consider things that they're just outside what you can naturally deliver to them. So that was really one of the key times where I decided to really start to look more seriously.
Mark, where did you find the little black book with all the secrets of what to do in the right order? Because you did them really well. First of all, you had this mindset of team and culture, delivering great product, evolving and innovating, but having a growth mindset about the potential for your team to create opportunities. You then centralized everybody in a single place, which then amplified what you could do there. And then you went out and said, can I solve business problems with things that aren't in the company through some type of transaction, and brought on an advisor to help you think through the options and prepare for it years before you actually did it. So, Mark, you either just tripped over and did a round off backflip accidentally into the pool, or you are very lucky to have good people around you who pointed you in the right direction.
Yeah, I do
So,
feel it's probably a combination of all of the above, right? I feel like I remember one of my early mentors said, surround yourself with talented people as job number one, but then number two, know when to get out of the way of them. And I think that was some good advice I tried to hang on to over the years.
when you got to the point of saying yes to what ultimately became the buyer, so Gravity Global, um, what was the size revenue of the agency?
So we were around 5 million. If it were capitalized billings, it would have been 15, 16 million, something like that.
Yeah. And then you sound like you maintained good margins, right? 50% employee cost. So you had a decent EBITDA. Um, when ultimately the other Mark reached out to you, and this is Mark Lethbridge of Gravity Global.
Yeah.
Were you ready?
Well, it's funny.
Do you feel ready?
I had just been through a couple of other opportunities right prior to COVID. There were this broker I mentioned to you, who's a fabulous business mind named Mike Conroy. He had served up the right kinds of buyers for me a couple of times, and we got a few miles down the road on one of those, and a couple of things weren't aligning with my three criteria, which were I wanted to make sure this was going to be an additive acquisition, so we would reduce layoffs and redundancies, and therefore just maximize our team's opportunity. It had to have really interesting opportunities for my team, my leadership team, and then have to have a bit of runway for me. So as you know, we worked through these earnout periods, and I wanted to make sure it would be a positive experience for me as well. So a couple of those didn't suffice in those areas. One was looking very good, and then COVID struck. They had about 80% of their business in the retail and hospitality space, which forced them to pull their interest. And then I had been kind of secretly admiring Gravity from across the pond, and they had recently won a U.S. Agency of the Year award through some of their Magnet affiliation. And I reached out to Mark on LinkedIn and congratulated him. We had a couple of Zoom calls, and Mark Lethbridge is the kind of gentleman that you can connect with and engage with very quickly. And we did. I absolutely adore him as a human and as a leader. And we just had great conversations. He had then explained this pathway that they were on to grow their footprint in the States. And one thing led to another. And before we knew it, we're letter of intent and moving our way through due diligence.
So you have gone through this process with a few prospective buyers. You built a good relationship with Mark, and you rightfully evaluated them even before it became something real. And you thought about them as a potential partner with you and a place for your team, a home. When you finally got the LOI, the real LOI, who was involved in the discussions on their side, who was involved on your side, and you're looking at it, man, 19 years in, what did you feel?
Yeah. Well, it feels like, to stick with the music analogy we started with, like, man, you're about to go on Carnegie Hall. And the palms get a little sweaty, and the heart rate goes up a little bit. But it's also just this magical thing. You've been working for a long time for this moment, and you believe in it, and you want to kind of carry that without dropping the ball, to mix metaphors. So on the Gravity side, they are PE owned. So there were those constituents in the group. There's the C-suite, the board, and an attorney law firm, all with, as you know, very different points of view and topics and issues to navigate. And on my side, I had an attorney, a broker, and myself and my finance team. So those were the parties. And it's funny, I would not have thought I would have enjoyed this as much as I did. but I absolutely loved the process because I learned as an entrepreneur and the business owner, I feel like I can sell Morse code to anybody, right? And you believe in the team and you know we can accomplish, and you have this growth mindset, and you can slay any dragon that walks through the door with this team. So I enjoyed going toe to toe on all those issues, even if I wasn't 100% comfortable in that in-depth conversation around the financial metrics and how this impacts the PE firm's perception on the business. I loved all those conversations. So I think part of what I was hungry for too, those opportunities to just grow and stretch my own thinking around the business.
You're a drummer turned entrepreneur, thrown into the lion's den with a private equity firm and their international law firm, with your local advisor, potentially even like, how did you feel going into that level of scrutiny negotiation? I know it was fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're talking about professionals who are buying and acquiring and growing something versus you're just running your small business and servicing clients and building a great culture. So
yeah,
what did that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I will not sugarcoat it either. There were times where, you're losing sleep over it and wondering if this is the right thing, and realizing how much it's going to change what you have built, and realizing whether or not it's important to you. And I think when you start losing sleep over it, it's a big deal. And there were times where it felt like, is this really going to go through? Because it was just taking a long time on a couple of issues. And it reminded me early of a time when my attorney walked into a big client of ours, and he knew that they were taking advantage of a small business. And we had about a $8 million assignment on the table, and I'm chewing my fingernail across from him, and he's saying to this client and their procurement team, just going toe to toe and saying, if you're not going to help us with issues 3, 5, and 7, we're just going to walk. And as soon as he said that, my heart fell, and I was terrified about what that could mean, right? You just see the dollars coming into the business or going out at that point. But it ended up working, and I learned how to trust the experts in those situations. And I felt that going through this deal process too. There were times where my attorney was saying, if they're not going to do this, then we need to walk. And I'm sure they were saying it on their side as well. And you're playing a little bit of poker, but at the same time, staying close to people like Mark and their CFO, Andy Danes, and some others in the group, understanding that they really wanted to work through that, and understanding it was important for them to know that I really wanted it to work as well. I think that helped us rise above some of the details of the deal and the minutia that was becoming more important to some of the attorneys than it was to some of the business leaders.
Sage advice. Whenever the deal killing experts, accountants, investors, attorneys start going back and forth on things that are legalese and not as material to the business side as the original conversations you had with Mark, you went back to the business side. That's how you get a deal done. So kudos for that. And also Mark and Andy are the types of people you feel comfortable doing that with, which is great.
Yeah, 100%.
But you built your deal team, you're going through it, you sign the LOI. Typically, LOIs in our industry range from cash on close, earnouts. Earnouts are very common, and some even rollover equity if the company has a future of capital markets or an additional play. Assuming that's similar type of structure to yours, what about the deal structure did you like? And then you had those requirements about your team, about the opportunities around those teams. How did you bake that into the deal?
Yeah. I think the thing that I really loved about this was it's complete. We were the first acquisition in the States for this US buy and build. So we were truly 100% authentically additive. And I really have developed a fabulous relationship with the U.S. CEO, who is now part of the operations as well, Jose Lozano, out of another acquired agency called Ninth Wonder. He was on the board of Gravity, is on the board of Gravity during the time of our deal. And I developed a great relationship and understanding of how the business is going to be structured and run through him. His approach is much like a partnership. So it felt like we had our arms around our shoulders all the way and kind of walking through how we're building this. So I spent a lot of time building out a video and a content studio production facility within the walls of Morse Code. That became a very attractive delivery mechanism for the global entity. So within this acquisition and within the groups now, we are building out a center of excellence around content and production for all of our global work. So that became a really momentous insight for our team and for our position within the US entity. My role has, as you acquire more businesses, the role gets a little tighter and tighter. And as I continue to work through my earnout season with them, I'm looking for other opportunities, and Jose has been fabulous at helping me, pulling me in on certain things to help continue to build the business. And that's really what I was kind of hungry for too, as I shifted into my next phase of entrepreneurialism.
A tricky point for a lot of people when they sell is the earnout and their involvement in influencing the earnout.
Yeah.
How did you approach that? Because you're in a role that is expanding and contributing and giving you professional opportunity and fulfillment, but at the same time, your earnout's typically tied to what you brought in.
Yeah.
How did you traverse that?
Yeah. Really good question. So I think one of the keys for me that I was fortunate to learn early was making sure that my team understood what our measurement sticks are. And then I wanted to incentivize them to make sure that we hit those. So we have largely hit our targets, but it all centered around just this need for alignment. And I've learned since doing this that even any acquisition, whether it be in the agency business or professional service firm, and I have come to learn from manufacturing businesses as well, as soon as a deal closes, there's a 90-day period where chaos reigns. The pipeline slows down. People are trying to figure out what their role is. They're a little ambiguous in some areas. Communications may be a little varied, et cetera. But once you get through that 90-day period, then people kind of snap out of it and they're back into the rhythm again. That was what it was like for us. And I think there was a period of time where everyone's scratching their head saying, was this the right move? But we've gotten through that. And I think a lot of it has to do with communication and alignment and making sure that we're both listening and to our teams and how things are going, and then helping them adjust. I think one of the big things through this earnout period is while it is an earnout for me, I've also learned it's almost more important that I help the team understand what that looks like for them as they usher into that. Because ultimately, if they're able to deliver and to stay on their game and continue to contribute and grow, then that's going to help me during my earnout. So those are some things that we've worked through. Not everybody was stuck around for it. You know, it's one of those things where some people I told shared the news immediately to my inner circle. Some broke down in tears, thinking that Morse code's going away and it will never be the same. And some embraced the opportunity, were really excited by it. And you kind of manage through that bell curve in the various ends of that. But I think staying true to why we're doing this and staying true to this team approach and the culture helped us get through that, and helped the earnout feel less like an earnout and feel more like a next evolution of the business.
How much gratitude did you have for them? You're essentially selling your client roster, the team, and what they can do, right? It's not all on your shoulders. They're not buying Mark. So how did that gratitude resonate with you? And then what did you build into the team in regards to incentives, thank yous? What is it that you felt opportunity wise supported that gratitude?
Yeah, I think there are four leaders on the team who receive some financial incentives and bonuses to help that transition. And the gratitude along the way is me fighting for them to get new positions in the organization, and being tenacious about that until they do land. and and that's not always easy, because you have these combined entities, and every entrepreneur has a team, and that team, he or she is fighting for their position on the group. So the amount of gratitude is it's almost too difficult to explain my gratitude to them and for the contribution they made to the business. But throughout the years, we've always built the business as a brand, and understanding that the brand is what's going to bring the value. And while it's made up of people, we try to keep the people part of it as part of the brand, if that makes sense. So I think everyone who has stayed invested in this has felt more good days than bad days, has felt the growth that has been brought to them. Certainly the gratitude that I've tried to bring to them by defending them and growing them and giving them these opportunities that we've talked about, trying to make that as real as possible. But also, I can't underscore enough the way that Jose and Mark have also embraced the team and helped us integrate this across the group. They've gone through the journey with us, obviously. And sometimes when the numbers aren't hitting, they're scratching their head and saying, is this the right team? Do we have the right people? Is this the right model, et cetera? And then trusting. And then when things turn around and things are great again, then feeling that momentum and believing. So it's been a fabulous journey, building not only our internal trust with our team, but also with this new global team.
The back and forth with the deal teams gets you to definitive documents. So you get that long version, and they say, Mark, no more red lines. This has got everything we've negotiated for. We're going to sign it. Unpack for the person who's not experienced this before, what that was like. Where were you? Family involved, discussion wise? Like, what did that signing, the definitive purchase agreement, look like for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think I was the one who said no more red lines, which is a good. It's a good lesson to learn too. I learned that when you're selling something people want and value, you have terms that you want to meet as well, and you don't have to succumb to every request. And especially when you find a partner who truly looks at it as a partnership opportunity, and we did that in Gravity. So I think we were all aligned that the red lines must end. And at that moment, for me personally, it was exhaustive because I don't think we could have created a more complicated deal. You have a UK agency buying an American agency. The UK agency doesn't have a presence here, so they have to create a presence here. And I needed to do a sub-F reorg of the organization to transfer. I mean, all sorts of complications to make this work. But so when you come to that final signing, there's this sense of relief. There's a sense of, is it real? But for me, I was so I was kind of blown away by the timing of it, because as you alluded to earlier, this was literally 3 days before the 20th anniversary of Morse Code. And it could have happened 3 months earlier. It could have happened 2 months later, but it was literally right around that exact same time. So it just felt like everything was falling into place the way it ought to. And for my family, I think they were all super excited. Really, specifically, my wife probably wanted to walk away from it months prior. But it was a good lesson for us all in pursuing something and having that perseverance and tenacity to just keep going at it when you believe it's the right thing. And this one was. So it was great.
So you signed.
Mm-hmm.
What was celebration like?
We had a Zoom call with the London team, the law firm, my team, and it was great. We laughed. We referred to a couple of touchy points along the way. We shared our excitement to move forward and toasted virtually. And then I went to my team and let them know it was done. I don't think they believed it because I think the joke for months was, I think we'll see it next week. I think we'll be done next week, and that went on for months. So when it was finally done, we had a great celebration on our side too, and went out with some of our team members, and that was just a sign of relief. And I think everyone's biting the fingernail a little bit too, just trying to figure out, okay, what does this look like going forward? And I hope this is as good as it sounds. But it was super energetic and exciting for me.
Would you classify this as a significant milestone that after you complete this earnout period or this contribution period to the next version of the company, that you'll go back to drumming and traveling around, or how big of a deal was this for you?
I have learned that it's a lot bigger of a deal than I thought it was going to be. I have so much, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do too. You have so much of your identity wrapped up into a business that you built, and you're the guy that does this or the person who does that. And when that's changed, you almost have to reinvent who you are and rediscover the attributes aside from the name of the business that got you to where you are. So I've been blessed or cursed with a portfolio of interests, and I've been experimenting with those over the last few years, as one of those being teach a course at the University of Minnesota, Harvard School of Journalism. That might be something I'm doing. I've been writing and composing sonic logos for brands, though that's really fun. So I have two sons who have entrepreneurial interests as well. So I may start something with them. And, it's a great time to consider some of those things. And I'm 56, so I've got a little runway left. I'm not ready to ride off into retirement by any stretch. But yeah, it's been, and who knows what happens at Gravity too. There might be more opportunity ahead for that too.
Opportunity at Gravity. Let's unpack those 90 days. Right? It's like the first 100 days of a presidential changeover, right? That can be a little messy to get things going, right? So you announce, you celebrate, and then you have the 30, 60, 90-day integration plan. It sounds like some people were excited about it. Some people said, not for me. How did those 90 days shake out? And then how did that differ, if at all, from what you expected those first 100 days to be?
Yeah. So we have various practice areas within the agency. There were with Morse Code at the time, the integrating into Gravity. There were commonalities in creative, in strategy, account service. We had a project management function. Gravity as an entity did not. We also acquired a portion of Ninth Wonder, which was a B2B segment at that time. So we're all trying to figure out what's the best operational model. And the account people are excited about potentially working on more accounts and getting introduced. The creative team's excited to work on some more creative opportunities. Our content team was excited to take on more work from other brands across the newly acquired group as well. The business development piece, I think, was the area where we did not spend enough time, thought, and strategy thinking through how we're going to announce this, how we're going to sell this short term. Our current clients, we had a great introduction to them, and they all were energized, saw the value in gravity and the shift from Morse code to gravity, what that could bring to them. I think operationally, sometimes we noticed that people were taking their eye off some of their day-to-day responsibilities because the shiny object of the new gravity way was just a little bit more exciting. And we're all creative individuals who look for exciting things to work on. So it took a few weeks and or months before we realized, okay, we need to make sure we're minding the store here, and how come things aren't moving quite as efficiently as they used to? It's because the process is changing, and this organization doesn't do it the same we did. We don't have these systems in place yet. So it's pretty eye-opening for the organization to see all the things that need to happen. It wasn't just in delivering work for the clients; it's all the behind-the-scenes stuff too that needs to happen. And then as you're growing by acquisition, it doesn't stop with just Morse code. We bought part of Ninth Wonder, and we bought another agency called Mojo Media, and they came in with their own great team and great systems and process. And then we bought the rest of Ninth Wonder, and there's more systems and teams. So it's this kind of always evolving and changing and improving mentality that our team has been going through, and I think enjoying more days than not.
You're now at this point of earnout, teams integrated. You did multiple acquisitions to expand the U.S. footprint.
Yep.
You're starting to figure out what it's going to look like day to day. With the knowledge and hindsight of where you sit now, what would you go back in time and tell Mark A about the deal, about prepping for integration, about how Mark spent his time? What are the things you're going to go back and tell Mark about the things to look out for, the things he needs to improve, the things to see around the corner on?
Yeah, I love that question. I think when I look at my role back then versus where it is today, I would say stay true to the understanding that nobody knows the business and sells the business like the founder, and understand your role within that, and stay true to that through the transition. You're the calming, steady hand on the rudder through all these storms, and everybody from your clients to your employees values that stability. I think I was able to manage through some touchy situations with that, and I didn't really consider that as a strength at the time, but I think it was very valued throughout that experience. I'd also say systems, while they sound unsexy to a creative marketer, they are really powerful. So get your systems tight, from your project systems to time tracking to financial systems, and integrating those as seamlessly as possible. That was really helpful. And then I think getting your culture and mindset around an aligned point of view, and being okay with understanding that some people, like the Miles Davis example earlier, you may not be right for this band any longer. It's okay, and not taking those kinds of changes too personally. And it doesn't mean you still can't be an empathetic leader and help them find their next move, or accept when they decide that they want to move on. So I think being open, being willing to change some of those things that you may not necessarily have thought of, those are really pivotal learnings, I think, through the phase. And then also just understanding you're creating something that's valuable. And I had never really considered that or realized how attractive that was until you walk into one of those first deals. And then that gives you some leverage and some understanding of what's important to the buyer, which also kind of informs what's important to your team.
You're considered a buyer now, Mark. So
Right.
if someone's listening to this and, like you, hears things that really jives, right? It's a similar tune to the impulse that they feel they've created in their agency, and they want to reach out to you or reach out to Mark or Jose, like you reached out to them. What are you looking for in the agency now? What type of agencies can hear their note playing from Gravity's US tune?
Yeah, I think today, we're always looking for a deeper understanding of insights and data, and certainly the movement of AI and understanding of technology and how all these things can work together to fuel and support the delivery of a global brand. And today for us, it's how can we be more relevant in a region where we aren't relevant geographically, or understand how to communicate to a segment of an audience that is really complex market, complex message, or in multiple segments that are just really hard to weave together. So I think those attractive organizations are some who have demonstrated the ability to weave together these disparate parts that make a marketing effort in a complex or sophisticated market easy and simpler through either data or insights or a combination of technology. I think those are all really interesting for us, as well as the ability to break down some of those technical and complex messages into a simple creative style for social engagements, for ongoing brand relationship types of engagements.
And if someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best place to do it?
Yeah, I can reach me at my Gravity email, which is mark.morse@gravityglobal.com.
Mark, the younger version of yourself appreciates you for creating this. So thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been fun to unpack it and relive it a little bit.
Cheers.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. And thank you for listening to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. You can find us on Spotify and on YouTube. Give us a follow, hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us out. We post stories like this one from Mark and fellow industry experts about how they sold or acquired agencies. If you or someone you know should be on the show and talk about their agency story, leave us a note in the comments. We'd love to talk to you. As always, thank you for listening. We appreciate you. Stay safe.